Three, two, one. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to week 2 of Look Who's Chalking. If last week was a standard week 1 where we had everything set up and we'd been in the trenches for 2 months trying to organize everything, I would feel worse about how my week went. We all know what happened to Eli Mitchell, although, anytime an injury takes you out, usually that kind of half excuses you, but not when the other guy doing a show with you kind of predicts it. So bad week 1 for me. However, that has now forced me, because of my competitive nature, I got so pissed off. Now I'm in the weeds. I'm in the muck. So I'm hoping week 2 goes a little bit better for me. Hopefully it was a little better for all you. Gary, I don't even want to ask. How was it going? Week 1's ruckus. How'd you hold up?
Yeah, week 1's a shit show. And I know this, and I still play it pretty intensely anyway, even though I shouldn't. I play a little less than I do for the rest of the year. But I was in the red.
I was just saying that, though, about gambling in general. Everyone goes into the week. No, like it's week 1. We're going to take it easy. But all of a sudden, it's Sunday morning, and you're just clicking overs and unders like the maniac that you are. You can't stop yourself.
Yeah,
if you're gambling in the first place, by definition, you are a gambler, which means you want to be doing a lot of it week 1.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. And by the way, I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube, Andy looks like he just got back from the Amalfi Coast, and I look like an albino little child. But it's okay.
But you know me, I like to do these things from bunkers. I always feel like I have a better chance of finding out information if it's in a dark cave-like environment. Didn't work out so well for me last week, but hopefully this week will be a little better. I stay, or I'll double down on what I said last year. I am a fan of when the bye weeks start. I can kind of see what's going on out there. But at least this week we have, did I see this right? 2 Monday night games?
Yeah, they used to always have this double Monday night header on the first week of the season. Not sure why they have it on week 2 here, but yeah, between the 2 Monday night games, the Sunday night game, tomorrow night's great game that we're all excited for. There's a lot of big names off this slate. So
I am very much looking forward to it. I'm going to need you once again to be my Vanna White off to the side, if you would be so kind to pull up random things that we would start talking about. Sure. But when we're looking at this week 2, I remember something that I said last year: always look for week 1 duds many times equal week 2 studs. And there are probably quite a few circumstances you could find yourself getting deals on someone that people probably are overvaluing the poor performance. A lot of over-evaluations are going on. Remember, no one's playing in the preseason. People are tripping over their shoelaces. Nobody's tackling properly. Nobody's covering properly. People are going wide open for all sorts of yards. I don't think what you saw out of Devontae Adams, I don't think what you saw out of A.J. Brown, I don't think what you saw out of Tyreek Hill is going to be the norm. But that maybe is just me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Well, I mean, I don't want to say that we can't have those, 2 week in a row spike performances. I mean, we see it like from guys like Justin Jefferson, who's not on this slate, Cooper Kupp's on this slate. Like Devontae Adams, I wouldn't be surprised to see those guys have great games again. But what I am in total agreement with you is big bounce back spot week, huge. There's so many examples of it, and we'll go through it as it goes on here. But I would not at all be surprised to see the Broncos dominate, the Rams dominate. Kyler Murray have a much better week. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see a big bounce back spot across the board especially from our superstars. So.
Well, you brought one up, and maybe I think this is a later game, but regardless, maybe it's a good place for us to start because the game was actually most recent. How about those Broncos? They are going to play Houston, correct?
Yeah, at home. Yep.
So they're going to be playing Houston in their home opener. Another thing to always remember, people just think because it's week 2 that, oh, yeah, well, now the season is starting. No, this is a lot of home openers for people. So it's just something you also have to consider where, sometimes I've always thought in home openers, you're likely to get a little bit more out of poor teams than you would, say, week 7. In many cases of week 1s and 2s, fluky upsets because people are just using that hope from a delusional fan base to propel themselves to a win that week. But with this Broncos game, they're home against Houston. I actually am low on the Broncos this year. I wasn't as surprised as other people that Monday night game went down the way that it did. What do you foresee coming in this Houston game? Do you think it's a great spot? Maybe people will stay away because of what they saw. Plus, they think, well, Houston just tied Indianapolis. Maybe they're not that bad. Think people might stay away. You like my idiotic guy voice? That's truly what I see, though. When someone makes me go around them on the highway because they don't realize they're going slow in the left lane, that's just their perma voice to me. That idiotic up and down,
We should have been keeping track of these over the years. Idiotic guy voice, regular hat guy voice. We're gonna have there's a bunch of different.
Your boxing ringside announcer voice.
Yeah,
that was always one of my favorites.
That's one of my top favorites. Yeah, that was good. I am with you in that I think Denver was preseason overrated. Like I think people were overly excited about Russ coming over. I think there's still some holes in that roster, although the offensive personnel is pretty elite. When you consider the 2 or 3 receiver sets they could do. I like Alberto as a tight end, and then obviously the 2 backs and Russ. But from a defensive standpoint, I don't know if they're as good as we maybe thought. That said, I think that this is such a big bounce back spot. I still think they're a good team, just not a great team. Yes, it's short rest, but I'm not worried about that when they're at home. Just not only are they out for redemption, I mean, that was embarrassing what happened to them in Seattle, right? They fumbled on the goal line twice. They couldn't get the freaking ball in the end zone. Russ, the crowd definitely got in his head. I think he wants to go out and dominate this weekend. So even if they're popular, and I'll try to find some early ownership returns. I think
don't worry, it's week 18 or 19 of people waiting for Javonte Williams to get that full workload. It's one of my guilty pleasures, one of my favorites. Every year I told you, but they act like it didn't happen. They act like they weren't begging you to draft Trey Sermon last year. They were overdrafting Javonte Williams last year. They're doing it again. They did it with ETN. They can't stop themselves.
Yeah.
They need to write that article about the new guy in town as James Robinson's chugging along scoring touchdowns. I got news for you ETN people. He's skinnier than Gary. He's never getting the full workload. And it's so easy to see.
ETN,
I just can't believe. How can you not see it? He looks like he looks like Dexter McCluster out there. And you think they're just eventually going to give him all this work? He'll be dead.
The pro ETN argument was, in my opinion, this offseason was never about ETN. It was about James Robinson coming back from an Achilles because we've never seen it before. And then in week 1 of this season, we see him and Sterling Shepard go out and look fine or better than fine. 3 touchdowns combined between those 2 guys. That's insane, man.
They got new shit, Gary.
Yeah, I know, but they did,
big
Cam Akers had that new shit
ones.
too. And he didn't look good.
I think he got that old shit.
Oh,
I
got
think
the old
they
shit.
gave him the old shit.
I guess Cam Akers got the old shit. Well, mazel tov to all the new Achilles injury guys who are getting the new shit. Good on them.
How's that for some analysis? He's got the new shit.
He's got the new. I know there's these medical advances. It's very clear, but as far as the production on the field, we have not seen that. We've seen these people rush back from Achilles, which is amazing. 8 months removed from James Robinson, 8 months removed from Sterling Shepard, but to see them succeed, whatever. I'm going on a tangent. My argument was more anti James Robinson than pro ETN in that regard. This Denver one, though, let's call a spade, though. The guy caught 11 of 12 targets this week. If Russ is going to be checking down to Javonte Williams like that, and he was in on almost every passing down at 6,500 on a full point PPR DraftKings, the guy's in play. I don't care.
I love him this week.
Yeah, he played 56% of snaps. I want to see more than 56%
a random rant that had nothing to do with this. And you're right. And he looks
good, man.
He looks really good.
Exactly.
Yeah. But he got, what was it? 7 carries in the game. 9.
Yeah, he played 56% of snaps. I think Melvin Gordon played 38. So it wasn't and then Mike Boone got 3 or 4 snaps. But I flag planted Melvin Gordon on the Showdown show I did on ETR. I loved it because the price difference on Showdown was 4,000. Their ownership percentage discount was 40%. I'm this is the most obvious GPP type of play ever. And then Melvin Gordon, of course, had 5 goal line carries, fumbled once, just was so unlucky. But he's plenty involved. But if the pricing came out after Monday night's game, Javonte Williams would be 72, 7,300. So at 6,500 this week, he's a good play for sure.
Yes. So Javonte Williams is actually one of my favorite plays for this week because it could be, if they throw a beating, then both of them should eat.
Yep.
And if they both have, a fair share of work, he looked so good that you might see him bust a bunch of runs. I'll be the first to tell you he looks great. And the same way you had your argument for ETNs because of James Robinson, I had my argument against Javonte simply because whatever you think about him, Melvin Gordon gets a ton of work. And
He's a good back. Melvin Gordon's a good back. 100%. He still looks good. He passes the eye test almost weekly. Last season was his most efficient season yet. Like, the guy would be a starter on more than half the teams. It's just they have two good guys. He's still a good back.
And as far as those receivers, my worry was that Russell Wilson, his whole career, the reason gimmicky receivers flourish with him, like Baldwin and Lockett, is because he's a slightly, I don't want to use the term gimmicky like he's some Tim Tebow, but it's so rare that he drops back and on that, fifth step hits somebody in stride. There's a lot of shiftiness and shuffling, and then somebody breaks open down the field. And it's almost like you could never truly rely on this overly consistent production. And you saw it with an absolute stud in Metcalf last year when they bring in prime Jimmy Graham, like the most prime of prime. They couldn't properly work him into the offense. And the same type of worries scare me. It went almost a full half without a receiver getting a target. So How do you feel about those receivers?
The good thing about, I guess not. Sutton's a big body. So, like, if you were to compare the two guys, it would be Sutton is now Metcalf and Judy is now Lockett, right? Judy's the smaller, super fast, athletic guy. Sutton's 6'4", could be more of a possession, middle of the field guy. I mean, he's also super athletic. I mean, all the offseason type was that the Sutton Russ connection was crazy. They're both at Sunday morning Bible prayer, together, and we saw them both get their targets in the second half. It was a Judy game last week. If we are to see what they did in Seattle, we always used to speak about this, Metcalf week, then Lockett week. It would really go back and forth often. So I guess that would call for a Sutton week this time. I do think both these guys will have a good season, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how much to take from Russ's history in Seattle with like the Pete Carroll boomer run first offense and what we're expecting out of Nathaniel Hackett here, which is dropping back a lot, and to see if he can actually support these two receivers or not.
How about another game that kind of definitely caught my attention? You have Joe Burrow and the Bengals heading over there to Dallas, who now has to play their backup quarterback. And you talk about a bounce back spot. I mean, there's nobody better poised for it than that Cincinnati Bengals offense. Now, I guess we do have to see with T. Higgins, but even if T. Higgins doesn't play, it almost allows you to focus where you want to build your stacks and whatnot. How do you feel about Joe Burrow and some of those Bengals after that disgrace of a week?
Yeah, it just came out that T. Higgins actually may be coming back. He's doing drills today. I guess he's close to clearing concussion protocol. So that was fast, which I'm very surprised about. This game scares me. My favorite play from this game is Joe Mixon. I think Dallas is a mess right now, and we saw Lenny Fournette just run all over them. And I think that my scare on the Cincy side, if I'm using Burrow and Bengals stacks, is I don't know if the Cowboys can push them. I get it's in Dallas, but Cooper Rush, a quarterback, they really, again, they look lost in that Sunday night game against Tampa. I'm worried that they can push the pace for Burrow to hit his ceiling that he needs to hit. We know that they just love giving Joe Mixon elite usage. I think they'd be happy to keep the ball on the ground, keep Burrow out of trouble if they can. So I don't even know if I'm using Burrow this week. There's some great quarterbacks on this slate, or at least some interesting names. And I like keeping my quarterback pool really thin. Burrow ceiling scares me this week. I think if Dallas could stay in the game with Cooper Rush, then yeah, he could get pushed a little bit. But I prefer Mixon on this.
Don't you think there's a little piece of it that they would want to have him have a monster game because of disastrous the last one was?
I think really he's out for redemption. But I think they could easily have this game with 250 yards and 2 passing touchdowns for Burrow and just protect the ball with a lot of Mixon on the ground, and they could easily win this game. And there's, when I think about the ceiling that Kyler, Lamar, and Russ have this week, and then we'll go down to, Trey Lance, and I think Derek Carr is in play as much as annoying as that is. Matthew Stafford, I think, is a really interesting bounce back candidate here at home on 10 days rest against the Falcons. So I don't know. I don't like completely ruling out Burrow because I do think he presents a weekly ceiling, but I just don't know if I love the spot. It's a 42.5 over under. I just don't know if Dallas keep the pressure on. Yeah.
What about somebody, and I know he looks like garbage or looked like garbage. They say he looked all right the other night. They're going to run him a ton. You think there's some sneaky value with Zeke under 6,000? Or you're just so disgraced by him and the Bengals
he looked
able
good.
To stop?
Zeke looked good. Pollard actually looked bad.
Yeah.
Last week. I don't know. I think that, yeah, they'll try to use the hell out of Zeke. The Steelers didn't have much success running the ball against Cincinnati. I don't know how much to take
They
away.
have a garbage offensive line
Yeah,
though.
right,
Typically,
right.
you know.
Yeah, Dallas
So
isn't great right now either, though.
I'm
So
just
that's the
saying
thing.
that's something. Yeah, you're
It's
right. You're right.
fine.
You're
It's
right.
fine. I think Zeke probably makes the pool. I don't really want to invest much in the Cowboys this week.
He's
I think
he's in the kiddie section of the pool.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
not allowing him into that deep section. Maybe he'll nibble
Uh,
around the edges.
I think CeeDee Lamb had a good game with Cooper Rush last year, but I mean, I don't know. Also, here's the thing with running back this week. It's really, really deep. Running back, if you look
Yeah.
at the four main positions, running back is by far the deepest that I feel
I agree
comfortable
with
using
you.
a lot of guys. So I don't know if I need Zeke at 5,900 when Darrell Henderson is $200 less than him, you know?
Yeah,
So,
let's go to I guess we'll hit that up, but let's go to one of the ones you mentioned. He's your proverbial comeback guy. If he ever screws you, I mean, we say he's your ex-girlfriend. We've said this years ago. Like he's the girl who cheated on you and then told you, yeah, I did it. It's Derek Carr. And you just mentioned him. He has his home opener against the Arizona Cardinals. And I'll just say, outside of everything, forget about all fantasy, something is wrong with the Cardinals. And
yeah,
I'm talking about big time. They caved in at the end of the year, but more importantly, their play looked lifeless. I don't know how to describe this. When you look at Kyler Murray's runs early in the year, he looked excited to be there. He hasn't looked excited to be there in a year. I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know what's going on with the studying clauses, but they looked lifeless last week. They've looked this exact way. This is the same way they got destroyed in the playoffs, and then they carried that into their home opener week 1 in a game you got to get up for against the Chiefs and Mahomes. And man, they might be in for a world of hurt this year.
Yeah, it's a different class of team, the Chiefs. The Chiefs, I think, are my favorite to win the Super Bowl right now, and that was before last week. So I think they had no chance there. I think Cliff Kingsbury is just a terrible coach. They have personnel issues on both sides of the ball. I think their secondary is really weak. So they're going to be these games are going to shoot out when they can stay in them. This game is by far the highest over under on the main slate, 51.5. Like there's no other game environment on this entire main slate that if it clicked, maybe Washington, Detroit, honestly, is the only other one. But if it clicked, that this could be a 60-point game. There's nothing else really on the slate like this. So yes, I agree. The Cardinals are inherently broken, but if they can just stay within 2 scores of Vegas here, this game is the one to attack, even though I'm sure it'll draw some ownership. You know how we feel about Carr, man. Like I said it yesterday on the first look show I did for ETR, like, and you and I have shared this thought for years. Like he's the kind of guy I never love to use in DFS tournaments because he's got a high floor, doesn't have the ceiling of his peers. But I mean, we saw him give Devontae Adams 17 targets last week. I think this will be as throw heavy as they have ever been in their life. And now they're playing legitimately, as you mentioned, the lifeless Cardinals with a terrible secondary. I really like attacking this game. It's just hard to avoid.
Okay. That's obviously fair. And on the flip side of what you just said, there's a second game that you were looking to attack on top of this, and that's going to be the commander generals. Who are they now? The Washingtons, the George Washingtons.
I like football team.
I'm sticking with that. So let's just stick with that. Washington football team and the Detroit Lions.
Yeah. So this game is a sneaky one, right? 40. What do we got here? 48.5 over under with a 2-point spread. So we could get, and I think the Lions are going to be one of those teams that has a pretty good offense, horrendous defense, and that makes for a great shootout perspective. And we saw it happen with Washington last week against Jacksonville. Also, they were airing it out, man. 3 receiver sets like crazy. All of Curtis Samuel, Dotson, and McLaurin pretty much played every single snap. And the Lions aren't going to be able to stop a lick. Like if this game does stay close, I love this game to go over. And I think Goff's going to be in my pool this week for sure. I don't think Wentz was the perfect quarterback last week. That's not happening.
That might have been my one good call last week was putting him as the $3,400 flex. No, I actually did a double stack with in the Millionaire with McLaurin, Wentz, and Dotson because I don't care what you say about Wentz. He still had. If you're a guy and you have miserable interceptions and you keep chucking, I don't give a shit. Yeah. You're still in it for fantasy. Like that was the perfect example. 2 passing touchdowns, then 2 picks. Some other guy, that might have been the end of the game. He just kept chucking. He kept chucking. So I don't know. I never hated him as much as other people in terms of
from a fantasy perspective. Yeah, he'll air it out. I mean, the Colts, he was vanilla. He was very vanilla last year on the Colts, but I guess they had Jonathan Taylor. So,
they had Jonathan Taylor and one, as you saw with Matt Ryan, one good receiver.
Yeah. Right.
It's like,
but if I am to take a quarterback in this game this week, wouldn't you agree it's Goff? I think, at home for Detroit, he's $400 less. And I get that. Yeah, I'm being a little results oriented, but I would be shocked if Carson Wentz is the optimal quarterback 2 weeks in a row on this.
No, I can't be playing Carson Wentz in this game because he actually would nullify a certain suit wearing pick that I have on that team for this game. So I can't be taking.
I mean,
Carson
Goff,
Wentz for that one.
Goff threw the ball 37 times last week against the Eagles. I expect similar games. Obviously Washington's not as talented as a team as the Eagles are, but I think there's a chance that they're even, it stays even closer than, this game's just sneaky. Swift. I love DeAndre Swift, man. I like Antonio Gibson. And then I like all these receivers. I like McLaurin. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like Shark. I like Samuel and Dotson in my pool. Like, I think this is one of the games that a lot of guys end up in my player pool for sure. So.
Yeah, it just has that feeling of it, Detroit, what's good, it's out of their head now that they're going to have a good defense. Like, maybe I think they were hoping to the Dan Campbell, like tough guy elevation. Now that's right out the window.
Yep.
And now people know that they can move the ball on them in their own building with ease and certainty. So that will probably help the play calling on Detroit's side to be more aggressive. Yeah, we could be looking at good stuff. A sneaky tight end and TJ Hawkinson, he could have big weeks with Goff. And now that there's finally some other receivers there, I think he was second on the team in targets last week. He's not somebody who a lot of people are going to play. And if that is the second highest or around there over under, that could be a way to, as I like to say, sneak some points out the side door.
Yeah, agreed.
So then moving on from there, what do we have for San Francisco this week? They're going home and they have I forget. They have a very winnable game, is what I remember.
Seattle.
Yes.
Here
is a great case of hopefully fans overvalue one side that just won at home in prime time. That usually always happens. If a team wins at home in prime time, the whole audience is like, no, they're not that bad. There's the dumb guy again. He made an appearance. And on the flip side, you had San Fran with Trey Lance, who I told you last year, I have zero faith in this guy, and it's going to get, and I understand it rained. I have zero faith in this guy with that great roster to get the most out of them. We'll see if he proves me wrong halfway through, but he's going home, and people probably won't be thinking much of the 49ers after what they saw last week. There are some players you could play in here. We all know what happened to Eli Mitchell. He's gone for about 2 months, right out of my suit closet. I had to return the tuxedo early. And now we have his replacement, one of our old school favorites, Jeff Wilson, coming in for mop-up duties. And then also, I believe Deebo Samuel in a game against a team who Seattle's one of the worst teams in the league. Don't forget that. You could be looking at those two guys having very big days because Deebo doesn't even need Lance to have a big day, as you saw last week.
So it's funny because it kind of goes against like my game environment type thing where this is a 10-point spread with only a 42-point over under for San Francisco. But Lance is my favorite cost adjusted quarterback on the slate. I think we have to just throw out week one. It was completely monsooning there. Yeah. And I don't know if Trey Lance is a good quarterback. I don't know if Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback though either. And we like using him every week for fantasy. I think Trey Lance this week, first of all, Seattle's coming in riding as high as possible after taking down Russell Wilson at home. They're going on the road on 6 days rest. And Lance, even in a big spread, what's good about him is, I don't need him pushing either way. He can get there with his legs. He runs one in, he throws 200 yards, he throws two in, and boom, at 5,700, he's your optimal quarterback. So, especially if he's going to fall through the cracks at all, he's 5,700. I think I'm just going to be pressing and pressing and pressing. He's the kind of guy, though, you don't double stack. You definitely don't double stack. He's a skinny stack. You don't play him with Jeff Wilson because they eat directly into each other's ceilings with their legs. So there's very specific rules. He's either naked or skinny stack. And I think I play him in volume. I just think that it adds up really, really high. And we can't forget that he's still one of the true dual threat quarterbacks we have, that he can, get it done with his legs and, throw it a little bit. He threw the ball 28 times last week in the rain. So he'll throw.
So Gary's got him as a guy he's going to be using a lot. I'm going to kind of say the same thing I told you last week, but now you can just apply Jeff Wilson Jr. they need to win this game because games that are less winnable are coming up down the road. They need this win. And if there's even any little bit of hesitation or shakiness in Trey Lance's game, I think they will default to the run game as you saw them default to it. Mitchell was well on his way to having a good day, and they were feeding him. And then you saw it with Wilson. Tough road environment against the Bears. And people might point to when Mitchell was out for like 2 games last year, and Wilson, he got the work and he was serviceable, didn't have any massive games, but he wasn't healthy at the start of the year. He wasn't even on the right. He was fighting to get back from a knee injury just to get on the roster around the middle of the year. Now he's into this year truly healthy, and you could go see what he did a couple years back against the Patriots and a couple other teams when he was at full health under Kyle Shanahan, who has full faith in him. I wouldn't worry about Marlon Mack getting signed to that practice squad. So I'm all about taking Wilson at 5,100 or whatever they put him at.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Most of my not most of my lineups, but a lot of my lineups will either have Trey Lance or Jeff Wilson. I think one of them gets there this week for sure. Could they get there together? I suppose, but in a low scoring total in a big spread, I'd really prefer not to play them together. But yeah, Wilson's one of Shanahan's guys. Let's not overthink this. Like the other 2 running backs behind him are rookies: Tyrion Davis-Price, Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason's a special teams type guy. I think Davis-Price they might. Lord Tyrion Davis-Price, they might like better as the backup running back, but I think Jeff Wilson's going to get the bulk of this work until we see otherwise. I mean, we get that Eli Mitchell, for example, came out of nowhere last year. So is it possible that Tyrion Davis-Price does something similar and Kyle Shanahan, bamboozles us all? Yeah. But we know Jeff Wilson's been a Shanahan guy now for 4+ years. Like this is a guy he trusts in the goal line. He trusts in the pass game. He trusts in the pass protection. He's 5,100. The volume will be there. It's a really easy play.
I guess my counter to that would be as to why you shouldn't worry about that. Last year, they drafted Trey Sermon. In game 1, you saw Mitchell get all the work. He doesn't hide his cards as to who he likes. If this other guy was going to step in and take this role, he would have been the person who spelled Eli Mitchell before he got injured, and that was Jeff Wilson. So that I would say you would not have to worry about any sort of
I think
at least this week, unless
very fair point. Very fair point.
Yeah.
Yep.
How about old? This is usually a game people usually will talk about. It's an interesting one. You have the Bucks versus the Saints. I mean, Michael Thomas came back, nothing in the first half, then a huge second half. Is this going to be a good game? High scoring, low scoring? The Bucks got held to a bunch of field goals. They won't have Godwin. My prediction is Julio pulls that hamstring before halftime, and this is a kind of interesting one. People probably will stay away because of what has happened with the Saints and the Bucks these last couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you look at Brady's time with Tampa against New Orleans, he struggled in most of these games. So he did in New Orleans last year. I'll give him credit. He had the big game, 375 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. So let's not take that out of the range of outcomes. But if you look at the other 3 games against New Orleans, he didn't cross the 239-yard mark. He had a 0 touchdown, 3 pick game. He had a 0 touchdown, 1 pick game. This has been his Achilles heel for sure at his time in Tampa, and especially when you go down into the Superdome. But then again, it's a Bucs offense in the Dome. I don't want to rule it out. I haven't really kind of figured out what I'm doing exactly with the Bucs this week. I got to think about it a little bit more because I mentioned there's a lot of quarterbacks I like.
Atlanta was thought to have been tanking the season, and they kind of moved the ball on the Saints.
Yeah, Atlanta's better.
And again, it still is early in the year. It's tough to really know, what we actually saw. But yeah, you're right that this can go either way. That would be real weird to see Brady throw up yet another dud against these guys. Would be real weird.
Yeah, I'm also I'm trying to keep my quarterback room lean and I'll give a little quick inside baseball who I'm considering using right now as my quarterbacks. I'm thinking Kyler, Lamar, Russ. So the top 3 guys. I'm thinking Goff. I'm thinking Lance. So that's 5. And then I got Carr on there. That's 6. And then the 2 maybes right now for me are Stafford and Daniel Jones. That would be 7 and 8. I don't really want to go more than that with Burrow and Brady. So I don't know. I'm iffy. I'm very iffy.
Then let's look at Stafford, because if there is a game with a couple extra days rest, embarrassment on opening night, a true embarrassment, got to assume that Allen Robinson might get a couple extra looks. Like remember when Robert Woods was the talking point where like, oh, he's just finished, and then he had like 14 catches on a Thursday night.
Yep.
You got to be thinking against Atlanta going on the road, and now Atlanta takes that home loss at the end, limping out there to I believe this game is in LA, correct? So
yeah.
You're going to have the Rams at home again. This should be a get right spot.
Yeah, it fits right into the theme of this week with those bounce back spots. This is very easy for me. I think, I don't necessarily love doing teases, but like I'm thinking about a Rams 49ers type tease this week where I don't want to be taking these 10-point spreads, but I'd be shocked if and Broncos, like throw those three teams together. I get it's a little chalky, that kind of bet, but I'd be shocked if those three teams didn't go out, take care of business at home, coming off the bad losses. My biggest concern with the Rams, honestly, is Stafford as a whole. I'm not that concerned about the skill position guys. I love Darrell Henderson this week at 5,700. I mean, 82% of snaps. Let's talk about a guy who doesn't hide his cards. McVay uses one guy. That's it. I mean, it's very so like Henderson's the guy right now. We know Cam Akers had the bad shit from the Achilles, so that's not what you want. And then I said this yesterday too. Usually we say, okay, in Stafford lineups, I want to be using Kupp, right? But I'm thinking about it the other way around this time. So in my Kupp lineups, I think I'm pretty comfortable trying to pair him with Stafford when I can. I'm not using Stafford that often. You know what I mean? But like if I'm using Kupp and I think he has a ceiling game at almost 10K, I'm okay kind of going to Stafford in this spot. Some doubles with Allen Robinson, I think is okay because Allen Robinson is so cheap at 5,500. So yeah, I'll be sprinkling in. I'm not going to use Stafford in huge volume because I just don't know if he's fully right, but I definitely think I think the Rams roll this week. So.
Before we put on our suits, are there any other games or specific plays that you think are worth calling attention to?
Yeah. So, I mean, the running back side of things, we should talk about the top of running backs. So Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, sit atop, and then Saquon Barkley as well. So three of those guys are in two games. Saquon and McCaffrey are playing each other. Saquon's looking like he'll be the chalkiest play on the slate this week. I'm not a full fade, but I don't think I'd be forcing myself to go over the field on Saquon. He's up from 6,100 to 7,300. Don't get me wrong, he looks amazing. But I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina does everything they can to sell out and make Daniel Jones beat them. So, I think he's a good play, but at ownership in large field, I'd be a little bit scared. I'm going right back to McCaffrey though. I mean, he's still 1,000 less than Taylor, and this is a much different back than Derrick Henry. The Giants did a very good job stopping Derrick Henry in between the tackles last week. But you know who had 2 touchdowns for the Titans? Dontrell Hilliard. You know why that is? The Giants have 0 linebackers that could do anything in stopping a pass-catching running back. I think CMC just catches like 12, 14 balls this week. Legit. So I like
my only worry about that. It seems like Baker Mayfield does not know how to integrate him. Like when you saw all these other quarterbacks, including Darnold, they were peppering him with like 14 targets a game, and you'd see him just rack up these absurd numbers. The whole first half went by, and I think he had 1 catch or 1 target. I was shocked, and I'm just scared. Mayfield is the star ruiner.
That's
like he just knows how to ruin stars. I don't know what it is about his play.
with Odell. Yeah. I think that's a fair point, but I'll have 2 counters. 1, Kareem Hunt in Cleveland caught a ton of balls, right? 2, I think it'll be way more designed into the game plan this week. So it's not going to be like it's not like the safety valve where like he's the last option. I think there's designed wheelbarrows, there's designed pass catching opportunities for Christian McCaffrey right in the middle of the field, right in the middle of the front 7 where the Giants linebackers can't do shit. So I think that's it's speculative, but I think that's what's in the game plan this week. So but I'm with you. I'm a little scared of Baker and CMC's upside. I was full on team draft Christian McCaffrey first overall this year, and way too early reaction after week 1 is man, like the Jonathan Taylor hype of using Naheem Hines more was overblown, and the Christian McCaffrey, fully back, better offense might be a little overblown. And I think I'd have Taylor in a vacuum a little bit ahead right now.
You want to know how Baker Mayfield screws him? By fumbling the snap, and then McCaffrey picks it up, takes it for 50 yards, and you get no points because it's a fumble return.
Yeah, I could see it happening for sure. But Taylor on the other side, he's $1,000 more. I think he's going to still be a great weekly play, but I think I prefer McCaffrey a little bit more this week, despite the matchup with Jacksonville. Taylor has a really high floor. So, yeah.
Okay, and so we hit the quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends. Anything?
Jump
out at you.
I hit on Cooper Kupp for a second there. I think I might have been wrong about Devontae Adams, and I know he was on your fadeaway list too, and he was on mine as well. 17 targets is absurd this past week. 10 of 10.
Look,
I think he's going to eat, man. I do. I don't want to overreact.
Say one thing. I want to say no. I was even going to say two. I forgot to add this in my initial assessment. When you get a pricey item like that, the first 2 to 3 games, you feel obligated to get that item involved, a massive one like that. That not like an Allen Robinson, a guy who had a bad year, and then
Tyreek Hill also.
When you get the pricey item, you feel obligated. That quarterback, everyone feels. I want to see week 5 how many times Derek Carr's hitting Hunter Renfrow for those first downs and taking every little check down that he can there, because he tried throwing outside the numbers, something that I've always criticized him for never doing, and he ended up with 3 interceptions. Let's just see if by week 4 or 5 this starts sliding into something different. I think you got max 2 weeks left of what you saw from last week. And you know what? Maybe that's a stubborn call, but it's not. I baked this into the cake that you could look massively wrong weeks 1 and 2. And if you want to take the season-long prop, there's no better time to do it than now, if they even let you do that. I don't even know if they do. But I wouldn't start doing moonwalks around town if you drafted Adams and Hill and AJ Brown just yet.
So
just me.
Derek Carr, I think we have to start thinking of him just a little bit differently. So me and you, we've been doing this for a long time. And we were talking in 2016 about our crappy little fantasy lineups in our offices. And Derek Carr's yards per attempt was like 5.8, 6.0. It was all the way up to 7.7 last year, which is 8th in the league. Now you bring in Devontae Adams.
It's not about that. Remember, the air yards is
because yards per attempt it's exactly what it is. Yards per attempt. It's your yards that your each attempt goes. So if you're checking down, your yards per attempt are going to be really low.
I understand. And then if I try 2 60-yard passes to Henry Ruggs, that brings that whole average up. And that's why I've always
but a 17-game sample size won't really lie with that number as much. If you look at, like, it was Burrow and Stafford were the top 2 guys.
He takes my worry was not that he can't throw deep, nor does he attempt throwing deep. Mine is he hates throwing outside the numbers. The majority of wide receiver routes where it's like a deep post and things like that. I know he has a great deep ball, but my worry was that for an outside wide receiver, when you see the guys, he's thrown tons of streaks up the middle to Waller. 25, 30 yards down. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the full route tree outside the numbers. From what I've seen, he's Phillip Rivers number 2. You're either getting that deep shot or you're getting something over the middle. We saw him. We saw what happened last week. And if this continues, I'm willing to eat it. But this is one where my assessment does not have to change. The same way Phillip Rivers, they go, you're really talking about an MVP candidate? And then by the end, everyone found out what Phillip Rivers was. A check down guy who will always keep you within 1 score. Never allow you to go up 2, but never allow you to go down 2. And when it comes down to the end of the game and there is no more time for bullshit, you're getting the turnover, just like you got with Carr at the end of the playoff game and just like what you got with Rivers at the end of the playoff game.
Very fair. I am not the biggest Derek Carr fan in general, especially from a fantasy perspective. But I do think he's in for his biggest fantasy year of his career this year. And I'm with you on Devontae. I mean, Devontae Adams to me was a early to mid second round guy, not a mid first round guy. And that's why I was lower on him from an ADP perspective. But the way they use him this week and, just their history, I think if I were to go back right now, I don't love overreacting to week 1, but I would have him 7, 8, 9. If I know we're getting those same type of Packers weeks, if not even more targets, you got to have him in the top 7 or 8. So we'll see. It'll be worth watching. For sure. Yeah. But I have him in my FFPC main event team that I do with, the $2,000 you can win $1 million to first. We started wide receiver at the 10 hole and started Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, full point PPR. Feel great about that start right now.
Wow.
Wow. Very happy.
Life keeps getting better for Gary. And now why don't we head to, we'll go to our favorite fall store. Weddings are expensive this time of year, so you might want to they are. Fall's one of those peak seasons. Men's Warehouse pick of the week for me. I'm going to take a semi-draw for last week, even though it was an absolute loss. But I'm going to go back to that game. I think Gary, what he said, his second favorite game, and have a ton of this. I'm going to go with Antonio Gibson. I believe he's 6,100. He got the majority of the work last week. I understand they took him out for like 2-minute drills and something like that, and a comparable situation I heard like that. It's the same thing with Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon gets pulled for 2-minute drills and a lot of third and longs, but it doesn't really affect his value in the long run because he's getting everything other than that. We didn't see the type of JD McKissick vulture type usage that we did last year. We just got to face the fact that Ron Rivera doesn't like him, but he is a good running back. It's a very good running back. And Carson Wentz, unlike Baker Mayfield, was willing to use his running back, who I guess used to be a receiver, all the time out of the backfield, had like 7 for 61, something along those lines. He looked good on the ground, through the air. When you're talking about being indoors against Detroit, you saw what the Eagles running back, all 3 Eagles running backs scored a touchdown last week. Great spot for Antonio Gibson to really blast off a couple long runs, to go over 100 and a touchdown. 6,100, still pretty cheap if you ask me. Antonio Gibson, my men's warehouse pick of the week.
Very nice. I like it a lot. Yeah, I'm going to be using Gibson plenty until Brian Robinson's back and he shows me that he can, perform again. Which, obviously wishing him the absolute best. But that's where I'm at with Gibson. He looked very good. All right, so it's so funny because we just went on this whole thing about how I'm really excited about Devontae Adams, yada yada yada. But I'm going to go with a different Raiders pass catcher as my men's warehouse pick of the week. Let's not forget they're playing a Cardinals team that was absolutely obliterated by the Chiefs through the air. But where were they getting obliterated? Right in the middle of the field. Travis Kelce had a great game. Juju Smith-Schuster had 8 targets. MVS got a couple targets and he looked okay. And Nicole Hartman had a touchdown. But it was that middle of the field that they continued to attack. CEH was successful both through the air and on the ground. So I like both Renfro and Darren Waller this week a lot. Both very cheap. Coming back for revenge spots here. I like this game. I'm going to go Waller, though. And the reason is we just saw what Kelce did to them, yes. But tight end is really weak this week. We have Mark Andrews, Pitts, and Waller. We mentioned Hawkinson. I think Zach Ertz is in play. There's not that many attractive punts. This is a week where you kind of have to try to hit it right. And Waller, we know what his ceiling is. So at 5,600, in a good matchup where I really like the middle of the field, I just think that really adds up nicely. I also think he'll be the least popular of the Raiders pass catchers. So I just think it really sets up nicely. We've done this before with Darren Waller over the years, and we've gotten kind of hurt before, but I like Waller a lot this week at 5,600. So I'm gonna go Darren Waller.
Am I gonna like the way I look?
I guarantee it.
You want to wiggle a lineup or say nah?
Yeah, I'd be happy to give a lineup here. What I'm gonna do is I think, only because I have a couple more people watching me these days, I think there are some rules with DraftKings. You're not supposed to get like a full lineup. So
don't.
I'm going to give up. I'm going to give like an 8 out of 9 spot lineup, or 7 out of 9. I won't give a defense, and I won't give like one spot. So you could plug and play yourself. Here, Andy, I'll share my screen. Hold on.
All right, I'll try to DJ this so it goes full screen. Oh, you know what? While you're figuring this, I'm going to tell you about a couple things that bothered me with fantasy football online and Twitter. You ready for this? What is this trend of doctors who see an injury, and who knows if they're doctors, but they give their assessment of the severity of the injury in video form, in like, they'll have their background like me, but a fake medical background, and they'll talk about the severity of. You must, Gary, do not lie to me. You know you've seen these.
There's a million.
Who are these fake all the stuff that's happened in this world about people? You better not be giving bad medical advice because you could be causing all. This guy's over here telling me what happened to Chris Godwin. Who is this guy? This guy just bought a lab coat off Amazon, and he's just telling us, oh, well, you could see there's slight torque on the rebuild. Oh, that's 6 weeks. That's minimum 6 weeks. Just some guy in his house. I promise you, I could make a better doctor backdrop, and I'll be Dr. Andy giving you the severity on how bad your knees is, the good shit that Robinson got, the bad shit that Swift or whoever got. Who got the bad shit? Akers.
Akers got
that would be my medical assessment. All right, I'm gonna end that doctor rant now because we got the screen. All right, yeah, why don't we go through some lineup here?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to go with Trey Lance. I mentioned I really like him at 5,700. I'm going to skinny stack him with Ayuk, who, the target share with the limited size we've seen with Lance has been really strong on Ayuk. He also specifically has really strong target numbers when George Kittle's out. I'm not expecting Kittle to be back this week. He's 5,100. I think Ayuk's a strong play. I mentioned liking that Arizona-Vegas game. This is something different than I normally do not do in my secondary stacks, having a 2-1 without a quarterback. But I actually really like it in this case. I think Connor's a very strong play. He's got that role all to himself. He basically, we saw CEH both have success on the ground and through the air. I would be shocked if he doesn't score a touchdown this week. I think there's really high upside there. And then Greg Dortch, man, this guy is 5'7", basically is everything that they're hoping for Rondale Moore to be. Rondale Moore's out. Played almost every snap last week, 9 targets, 7 for 63. They didn't raise his price. So he's by far my favorite punt receiver of the week for Arizona. And then I have my men's warehouse pick of the week on there with Waller in my other correlation there. I mentioned like McCaffrey a lot. I can get him in. I definitely wanted a piece of that Washington-Detroit game. I think Amon-Ra is in a really strong spot here. I think he gets a lot of targets. I also like Chark in this spot too. You're going to go with what you want. And then you can do a couple different things. I'm not going to fill out the whole lineup, but say you wanted to go with like a Bengals at defense, you have 5,600 left in your flex there. So there you go.
All right. Why don't you clear that for me? Let's see if I can do a little something here for you.
Go for it.
Let's get my men's warehouse pick of the week in Gibson in there. Then I'm going to just go directly against your advice, and I'm going to do Burrow.
No, that's all right. It's not a bad play. I just don't know. And I look at the rest of the slate. I don't know if
I just think the way the season ended for them last year, where they were just throwing touchdowns left and right, I really think they're trying to establish that identity as one of those, we can beat the Chiefs. I don't think they're trying to be this, I don't think they're willing to go up in this game and just take the free win with the running. Maybe it's a sniff. Maybe it's a sniff. So let's just say, now that T. Higgins is playing, let's see if I can double this. Let's go with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Oh my God, how am I going to afford this? You're like, what? It's great. I'm just going to give all high-priced people and say, all right, guys, I'm done. You figure out the last 3,000. You
need to bring back in this. I don't think there's any way in a large, unless you're just looking at this from like a mid-sized tournament. Maybe in the power sweep you don't.
All right, I know how I can do this though, but we're gonna have to because you don't want to play your flex as a running back. So they say. So we're gonna chuck Gibson out simply because now it's altered a little because now that I know Higgins is gonna play. So now give me Jeff Wilson, and now give me Zeke. Hoping that extra work plops in the end zone. And, a lot of people are counting them out. They are at home, indoors. I think he can have an okay game there. 100 total yards and a touchdown, maybe potentially more.
He looked good. He did look good.
So why don't you give me those Steelers? I remember they weren't that expensive against the Patriots. And then what does that leave me?
You got 5,200 about.
I was expecting way worse than this. I was expecting I was going to have to make like 3,600 and change. All right, let's go to tight end. That'll be my last thing. You hear that, DraftKings? I'm not going to give those last 2 spots. What the hell am I going to give these people anyway? You think they would even want the last 2 spots? I could probably do your Waller, but let's go with Hawkinson just because he's cheap. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you can't find 2 5,500s, I think I can just, there's an Allen Robinson out there. There's a Kirk out there. There's a lot of people out there for you. And just a random sniff, they showed Amari Cooper getting open left and right against one of the best corners in the league last year. I'm very interested to see if at home in a better matchup he can do well. And that's really all I have to say, ladies and gents.
All right.
Now that we have a kind of a new setup, this week, this is going to be like my fantasy lineups. This week was a little better than last week. We got to a little bit more. I'd say by week 4. When do the buys start?
Week 4.
Roughly?
Yeah. I think
so.
Roughly.
Whenever the buys start, that's when you're going to see my lineups do well, and that's when you're going to see my show preparation do well and the cleanliness of these things. But I appreciate you guys coming back. Thank you. It was nice to see how many people were secretly waiting. That's always what I get. People in silence. And now I get to tell myself, how how many girls talk about me that I just don't know about? It's the same. That's just like, look who's talking. You know, it's a bunch of people. They love it, but they do it off to the side in silence. They don't want me to know and get the little tip on my cap. And all right, I appreciate that, Gary. Anything you want to say to these knuckleheads?
No, good luck. That's it.
All right, so you're just going to go with the Marco from Tropoia. Good
That's it.
luck.
Good
All right,
luck.
everyone. Good luck. Take it easy. Click a couple likes, send to a couple friends, and we'll see you next week.
Make sure you get that good shit if you tear your Achilles.
Good shit. Good shit.